still not starting. Coming to
Oh, it's mine.
the podium.
I can't see that far. Since
I look like John.
no, you do. But you do the same thing.
How you doing? You all right? Okay.
Except John's beard is a little bit bigger.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, he went.
Yeah, he's got the whole thing.
we didn't do that, but we went to like a service.
So maybe not.
Because the service
Well,
can be online.
6 years.
So it's gonna be all right.
There was some deaths, my dad's part of the family in Australia. Funeral because we were able to be a part of it. And we never would have been.
I want to know what else is
Do you want me to get the sodas? I'll do it.
Those are the cute.
You think they'll be in
Hey, Dad,
I know, right? I know.
we have some coffee.
It's a good coffee. So cold yesterday. If you want to.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do chocolate.
Oh, I thought you said if you want to. I don't want to step on you. Cold.
I love that. The brown one.
Oh, I don't want to step on
My mom
that.
drank a lot. Yeah.
That is a choice for her. We should really have mostly it's a month about too.
Sure loves you. That's so It's like an add-on. Do you want to? Yeah. It's It'll be for like Marvin Jim and
Yeah, I'm sure. They're full speed, just like you.
I guess so.
Mrs. Eva, I can give you a hug.
It is a good snow. It is a good snow for this.
We're tired.
I thought I saw near
Got like you said a variety. This is my friend Grace. Not old section 8, but we've been friends since Kelly. I can represent that. And then this is my mother. Nancy, Paul, Karen. I don't know how old she is. Kelly.
I've never seen one of those.
Yeah, I saw Joseph when I was walking.
My grandmother little cedar flock.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
Okay.
It's nice.
You and
But they haven't told me.
Oh, say shalom bimroma. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Imru amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru imru amen.
Hi, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for being here. Go ahead and have a seat. We're going to begin this afternoon, I guess now, with a brief ceremony called Kriya, which means to tear. And I'm going to, in a moment, give these ribbons to Jim and to Linda, Gloria's kids. And I'm going to ask them to participate in the tearing of the ribbon just a little bit. And this changes, as we talked about yesterday, it changes our status. It changes your status into people who are now mourning, into people who are done with all of the logistics of death, at least for a little while, and who are now able to just focus on the legacy and the life of Gloria, and to put yourself into a space in which we mourn.
You're going to repeat after me out of 9 times. Adonai Laka. Yehi Shem. Adonai Medrash. And that means God gives and God takes away. It is the name of God. And go ahead and tear just a little bit on that ribbon. It's got a little pre-cut so that it's not so big. And then you say Baruch. Dayan. Ha'emes. And that means blessed is the name of God. And with that, we begin.
Esa einay el hecharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Otche shamayim Barek Al Yiten B'mot Raglecha Al Yanu Shomecha Hine lo Yanu Velo Yishon Shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomecha Adonai Tzilcha Al Yaminecha Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka Ve'yareach B'layla Adonai Yishmorecha Mikol Ra Yishmor et nafshecha Adonai Yishmor tzedcha Neatam, 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 Neaduna. In Psalm 121, we read, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, and your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. And Adonai will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever.
Hi, and welcome, and thank you for being here on this, what turned out to be a beautiful day, so that we can say goodbye to Gloria Trotsky. 100 years old is a pretty amazing amount of years. And when we think back, none of us quite can, but if we think back to how much 100 years might be, to know that we have this opportunity to look back at those years together is truly an honor for me. And so we're honored to be here with you, with your community, with your family in this moment as we say goodbye together. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Rabbi Foster and Cantor Sachs. I'm Rabbi Hyatt, and it's a privilege to tell this story and to be here with you today. There's really three parts of a funeral that we get to participate in today. The first thing that we do is prepare ourselves for the hard work of saying goodbye. It's not easy. None of us have ever lived in a world that didn't have Gloria in it. And that's a hard thing to wrap our heads around. The second thing that we do is tell the story of her life, to tell who she was and what she meant to so many of us. And then the third thing that we do is say goodbye to her physical self and lay her to rest in a place where we know on this beautiful day, we hope that she will be at peace back next to her beloved Marty. And so with that, I want to share with you a reading that you've probably heard if you've been to a Jewish funeral recently, but it's just so perfect and appropriate for understanding the length and the depth of a life like this. It's called a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, and pain to compassion, grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made this journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. And with that, we're going to begin the work of telling this story, of hearing from those who knew so well and loved so much this matriarch, this woman. And so I'm going to call Kelly to begin.
Thank you, Rabbi Hyatt. Dear Grandma, you are the great matriarch of the Trotsky family. What an incredible and magnificent life you lived. From your early days growing up in Casper, Wyoming, to the beaches of Hawaii, summers at the Green Gables Country Club, and spending warm winter months in Scottsdale, these were all places you felt at home. And yet, there was no place like your home, your west-facing view. That was where you wanted to live out the last days of your life. And we are grateful that with the incredible care team of Crispin and Sandy and Carmita, you were able to do exactly that. Thank you to each of you for your tender, conscientious care until the very end of our grandmother's life. As the eldest granddaughter, I have the privilege of sharing some thoughts on behalf of all of your grandchildren, Carrie, Kevin, Michelle, and the impact you had on our lives. Oh my gosh, I thought I'd turn this on. Of course it's a scam. Perfect. That was my grandpa. It said scam likely. I want to share some of the most monumental ways that we will remember you. Our rock. We all loved and admired Grandpa's magnetic personality, and everyone knew that you were actually the trusted, steadfast companion, always right at his side. We saw you as the touchstone and the rock of our family, grounding all of us. I always appreciated that while Grandpa loved larger than life social gatherings and getting to know every waiter he ever met, you seemed to prefer smaller groups and private conversations. And it was your relationship with Grandpa that was something that stood out to all of us. For you were true lifelong partners and great friends, and you modeled for us partnership. Warm and welcoming. You made sure that each of our spouses, Evan, Nikki, Doug, and Jew, were all loved and accepted. What made it even more special was how you extended that feeling to each of our in-laws and our dearest loved ones. Sarah, Judy and Mark, Nancy and Tom, Alden, Patty and Henry. They were all always automatically included in family events, and you made sure everyone felt like they belonged and added to our loving family. Everyone was welcome. We all have fond memories of coming over to your house and opening the door of 307W to a warm, "Hi, honey." There was always a joyful smile on your face as you greeted us, and you sat in your favorite seat on your very beloved white couch. Understanding and appreciative. You were always grateful and appreciative any time that we made to come over. You understood and empathized with your grandchildren's busy lives. You just appreciated and loved any time we had to spend with you, especially near the end. You always wanted to know about our families and our spouses and our kids, always. You genuinely cared, and you wanted to make sure that they were doing well. And any small gesture was so greatly appreciated. Family. You inspired a loving family. We knew what mattered to you. You instilled in all of us a passion for travel, education, art, sports, and time with family. Meeting Grandpa at CU Boulder was very significant on many levels for both of you, and we understood how much you deeply appreciated being able to attend college and instilling in each of us the following generations the importance of higher education. As Michelle said, Grandma and Grandpa's generosity has impacted us personally in such a big way, allowing us to pursue the things in life that we are passionate about and giving us opportunities we wouldn't otherwise have had. We each remember Dolly Madison ice cream trips and an annual swimming day at Green Gables every summer. Many family events, countless birthdays, and observing Jewish holidays were always spent together. Chocolate. As my brother said best, Grandma was always down for some ice cream. We share a joint chocolate love, and I will always think of her when I'm enjoying some really good chocolate. At every occasion, we always tried to make sure you had your favorite beverage, caffeine-free Diet Coke on hand for you, Grandma. Legacy. Your two youngest great children, Carrie and Jew's children, Mike and Maddox, are named after you, Marjorie, Gloria, and Grandpa Mark. When Carrie and Jew had their boys, Briss, ceremonies, they share the important role in their lives and the traits that they hope their children will come to embody. And I know that for all of us here today, your memory will live on in many ways through our incredible privilege of being able to steward the future of the Trotsky Family Foundation and investing our time and resources to secure and sustain important places like Temple Emmanuel and other causes that are so critical to our family. In closing, We know the past 5 years have been really difficult for you. When Grandpa declined and then passed away 3 years ago, we didn't know how you would make it. And yet you did. Thankfully, we had 3 more years with you. On a personal note, my favorite memories were sitting gently next to you on that very, very beloved white couch when I had the time to ask you questions that I always wanted to know about your life. It wasn't always easy to get you to talk about yourself. You were very modest and reserved most of the time. And yet when you spoke, we all listened. We knew what you had to say was important. We will all miss you, Grandma. May your love be for a blessing. Amen.
So there are no pieces of literature that are used more often at moments like this than the words of the 23rd Psalm. And some people think that the reason for that is that it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And that's really enough of a reason. But I learned a long time ago when I was in rabbinical school, about the same time that I met Gloria, as a matter of fact. I learned that King David had something else in mind. And maybe he understood Gloria better than most. Because what he was saying was, don't get stuck in that valley of the shadow of death. Don't get stuck there. As so often happens with so many people. They get stuck when somebody they love dies. What King David was saying is, walk through that valley. And when I think back about Gloria's life, that's what she did. Joys and sorrows. She understood what it meant to walk through that valley of the shadow of death. So now we're going to call upon Cantor Sachs to chant this beautiful psalm, and then we'll read it together.
Adonai rovi lo echsor bino desheyor b'tzeini al mei menuchon Nafshi Yeshoven Yancheni v'magle tzedek Yancheni v'magle tzedek Leman Shemo Gom Kirach Begit Amaret Lo Ki Ata Imadi Shivtecha Umishanecha Hema Yanachamuni Ta'aroch lefanai Shulchan neged soverai Dishanta v'Hashem roshi Husi revaya Ach tov v'chesed yedefoni Kol yemei chayai Kol yemei chayai the shafty I don't know. So
If you remember the words, please join with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And now I'd like to call upon Rabbi Hyatt.
So there was once a great rabbi who was very old and had become very ill. And they knew that his time was coming. And as he lay in his bed at the end of his life, he was surrounded by people who loved him. His wife and his doctors and his students and his children and his grandchildren, and everybody was crowded around. It was at a different time, not in a pandemic. Everybody was crowded around his bed. And in the last hours of his life, he became a little agitated. And he began humming this tune over and over. And he hummed this tune again and again and again. And with each passing repetition, his voice got a little bit weaker. And he became a little bit more upset and frustrated. And his family and his loved ones that were gathered around were so worried. What was this? This wasn't what this was supposed to look like. And his wife begged him to stop humming and save his strength. But he wouldn't stop. And his students scrambled through pages and pages of books trying to figure out what was happening. And they were hoping they would find the source of this tune that he was humming and give him some peace. And they couldn't. And his doctors and his nurses shined lights in his eyes and they checked his reflexes and they tried to see if he was having some sort of physical ailment. But nobody could make him stop humming. And he was getting weaker and weaker. And finally, his children and his grandchildren gathered around his bed, and they began to hum with him. Softly at first, and then they got a little bit louder and louder when they got comfortable with the tune, and only then did this great rabbi stop singing. He waited for his children to sing this tune, to hum it just one more time all the way through on their own, and then he closed his eyes, and he peacefully slipped away. I think this is the story of Gloria, the mother of Linda and Jim and Barbara, the grandmother of Kelly and Kevin and Michelle and Carrie and Evan and Nikki and Doug and Jew, and the great grandmother of Levi and Elias and Isaac and Aviva and Maddox and Micah. What a list of beloved children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. And so this is the story of Gloria, who we were lucky enough to have in this world for 100 years, and who I understand so patiently taught us and taught you her tune. And I think I heard that she was a piano player and that she would sit her whole life. She started when she was a child and play piano. And while I never got to hear her play, I imagine, like many piano players, she probably had some favorites that came up again and again and again. And so she patiently and competently taught each of you the music that has made your lives so beautiful and so rich. And as she made her way from Casper, Wyoming, where she was born to her parents, Herman and Bertha Talpers, and her younger brother, Stanley, she learned to play that piano, which she carried with her the rest of her life. And she began a life of loving people and being a good friend. And as we know, she attended Mills College in California for 1 year before she came here to Colorado and went to Boulder, where she met Marty. And that's where the story of them began 74 years before he died. And they were married on December 19th, 1944 at the Hebrew Educational Alliance on the West Side. And that's where they began their family as a unit together. And they raised their kids, living a world of love and friendship and giving and involvement and community and charity. And while Marty was an entrepreneur, Gloria taught music in elementary schools, sharing that tune with so many children who probably don't even remember that that is where they learned to appreciate it. And as they became involved with different parts of our community here in Denver, they began to build a lasting legacy. And so with their philanthropy and their love and their gentle teaching over the course of so many years, they changed and grew, each of us. And Gloria and Marty, as we know, celebrated their 74th wedding anniversary just before Marty died in 2019. And Gloria celebrated her 100th birthday in September. And just 3 years and 3 days exactly after Marty died, Gloria left us. And even though I think her absence will leave a big hole in your lives and in your family, you can always go back to that tune that she taught you, the one that she quietly hummed in the background your whole lives. Whatever song it is that you remember from her, let it play in your head as you remember the rest of it, the histories and the lessons and the songs and the values that she taught you. This is the beauty of a matriarch, such a matriarch, that she built for you, along with her husband, this incredible family, and left for you a beautiful legacy, both of which you now get to carry on in her honor, all while softly humming the songs that she made sure that you would know.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of all generations. Thou governest all things with infinite wisdom and mercy, and who guidest the destinies of all of humankind. As a parent, have you loved us and showered your blessings upon us. Therefore, we shall not murmur even when sorrow befalls us, but with humility and unfaltering trust, we shall accept your decrees. In joy and in sorrow alike, we praise your goodness and acknowledge your justice. We remember that we are but strangers upon earth. Like a shadow, our life flees away. Help us, O God, so to walk in your sight, that when the few years of our earthly pilgrimage are ended, we may be ready to meet our end with tranquil mind. To thee we look for comfort and strength when one of our beloved is taken from us and a link is broken in the chain of love which binds us together. Though we walk in the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil, for you are with us. Be praised, O eternal our God, in all your dispensations, and sanctified be your name, now and forevermore. Let us all say together, Amen. Beloved family, and Stanley, I'm sure he's online with us. This is a difficult time, no matter how many years she lived on this earth. This is a moment that really reminds us of that bittersweetness that comes at a moment like this. Bitter because she's gone. She lived to the very end of her life. But there's a sweetness to this moment as well. Coming so close to Marty's death and recognizing that whatever physical and emotional struggles she might have had at the end of her life, it's over. And she is grateful, I think. I saw Linda on Tuesday. I was coming out of Zadie's. She was going in. And at first I didn't recognize her because, masks, it's hard to recognize people. She said, I'm just coming in to get some soup for my mother and I and a malt. Was it chocolate malt? Of course. Just going in to get that. And my mother and I always have soup, chicken soup, and a chocolate malt every Tuesday. Just a couple of hours later, she was gone. But she lived to the very end of her life, giving advice, giving counsel, always there. Especially for you, Linda. Always there to make sure that you were protected, because she wanted to make sure that that was done. She lived a very long life. And except for Jimmy and Linda, truth is, I knew her longer than anybody else was here. And when I think about it, I've known her since 1967. I first went to Casper, Wyoming as a student rabbi. My daughter, Debbie, who's here, friends of Kelly's, friend of the family's, obviously. She's 47. Your mother was 46 or 47 when I met her. That's how quickly this happens. And I've had a wonderful relationship with her. Never a word spoken that was anything but positive. Always there to make sure that she would care about everybody who was in her life. And that's what makes this moment so sad, because COVID has made it impossible for us to really give the kind of tribute we would all have liked to give in comfort and in warmth. Yes, it's warm. Compared to Casper, everything is warm. Yes, it's warm. There's no question about that. But we would love to have been able to engage in this moment at the temple. Why? Because that's something that they loved together. Always. And yes, they were so generous. There's no question about the generosity of the Trotsky family. And it wasn't just your dad. I'm convinced that your dad, yes, he was always generous and appreciated what he was able to do. But he was able to do it and is able to give it because she was there, always putzing him on, making sure. And we can't think of Gloria without thinking of Marty. And I have to say that there was something about Gloria that I always loved. I told you guys this the other day. If I was going someplace with your dad, and he and I had lunch often, I don't know why he liked that Korean restaurant up there. He liked that Korean restaurant. We would always go up there for lunch. And I would walk in the house to get him, and he would go like this to my belly. And he said, you're a little heavier than you ought to be. There was never once that he didn't do that. And every time Gloria would say, Marty, that's enough. That's enough. But that's who they were. You're laughing. Is that you, Kevin? Because you remember those moments. There's a beautiful poem that I think really does, or at least a little essay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but maybe part of it, because I think it aptly describes what this moment is about. Death is sweet when it comes in its time and in its place, when it is part of the order of things. For a mother, death is only half a death. Each life in turn bursts like a pod and sends forth its seed. When a mother dies, for a second time the umbilical cord is cut. For a second time the knot is loosened, the knot that bound. one generation to another. And now the mother lies broken but at rest, a vein from which the gold has been extracted. I really do believe that the author of that little essay understands this moment perhaps better than any of us. You are the gold, and you are the gold that has been extracted from this wonderful vein. And just like that beautiful music, which will continue, so will the values that your parents, both of them, have given to you, and the strength that your mother has given to you, in a very quiet and reassuring way, because it was always present. Never a time was she abandoned, or did she ever abandon anybody. She was always there, always trying to make sure that her care and her kindness was seen. Someone like your mother helps us to understand three things. Not luxury, but love. Not wealth, but wisdom. Not gold, but goodness. And why do we say that? They did well. It was great. These are two human beings who understood that they had to work together. And it isn't that they left luxury and gold and wealth behind. That's enough. But they left love. And they left wisdom. And they left goodness behind. And especially your mom. Let me tell you how I think that's true. Because she was the measure of all of that. Not only did she have a love for her family, but for people. A lot of people. On her stone, it says she was a friend. And she was. A good friend. And she gave her love freely. She cared about people in her life. All those years, obviously 74 years with Marty. But she had a deep devotion for her family from which she came. You all know this, but not necessarily everybody does. I was privileged to be the student rabbi in Casper, Wyoming. And the day that I came to Casper in 1967 for the holidays, I was there for 3 years. Just for the holidays. I wasn't there year and year. Just for the holidays, 2 weeks at a time. But the very day that I arrived there, your grandpa had a stroke. And never really recovered from it. But he was there. And the next morning, I went to visit Bertha because she is the one who was struggling with her husband's stroke. And so I've known this family ever since. And Linda and Jim's uncle, Stan, I told them this yesterday, took me up to Casper Mountain. Second day I was there, introduced me to the mountains. And I suppose that's why I fell in love with Denver. I had flown into Denver and out of Denver right there, but never been to the mountains. And he took me there. I was always grateful for that. But Gloria was not just the daughter. She was devoted. And when Bertha had fallen some years before and had to have a leg amputated, it wasn't enough just to make phone calls. Of course, in those days, phone calls were enough, but it's not like today with our telephones. But Gloria went back to Casper, took her 2 kids with her for a period of time, put them into school there so that she could help her parents as Bertha began to recover. And just like your mother, your grandmother was determined. So was your mother. Determined to walk through that valley, no matter what it was, and to make things better as we progressed. She was a person of wisdom. She was very perceptive. She understood, and some people would say, well, this is not the time for this. But she understood who she was, and she understood, I'm saying this with quotes, the role she played at a time and place. People today would say, how can you say that? I can say it because when they were first married, there was a role that people like Gloria fulfilled and did so not with anger, but they did so to be a partner with their spouse. Was Marty the businessman? Yes. But no less was she involved because she created a home. And she created that atmosphere that brought people together. Don't ever forget that. For her, that was a role that needed to be played. And she understood it. And that's the wisdom we can take from her in her generation, not necessarily in ours, but in hers. Oh, she was not the disciplinarian in your home. She really was. She really was. I know who your dad was. We all knew Marty. But she was that strength behind him. And she was the one who really set the standards by which all of you lived. And Marty too. I think part of that generosity and that kindness, not part of it, much of it was Gloria's. It was her focus because she wanted to make this community a better place. And I really think that she was clearly in charge. She created goodness. She was caring and giving and open. She had a great sense of humor, and she would use it often. And she would bring it to happy occasions and gave her speeches. See, that she would love this laughter because that's who she was. She understood that. The softer sides of life were truly hers. I want to correct one thing. She was not a piano player. She was a pianist. It's a big difference. And that's not a criticism. It's not. She understood the piano and she understood what it meant. And as you said to me yesterday, you would sit under the piano because that's where the best sound was heard. And she understood that. And so she had her piano and she had her garden and she played golf and she loved to ski. And she and your dad loved to travel. But they had their home. And she had her home. And that's where she died. And she was grateful for all of that. 40 years in that place. I didn't think Candlewick was 40 years old, but I guess I do remember that. She was present to all of you. And she loved her role as mother, as grandmother, as great-grandmother. I'm going to share 2 short letters from her children to say in words, but really more in feelings, who she was to them. Linda wrote, "Dear Mom, I'm very sad to say goodbye to you. You have been a wonderful mother to me in every way. I loved your understanding and gentleness, your compassion, and your concern. I will miss our Tuesday lunches and wonderful discussions that we had about the past and the future. I'll miss your presence, but you will always be in my thoughts." Love, Linda. And Jim wrote, "Dear Mom, we are all assembled here today to pay our respects and appreciation to you as our mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and a strong woman and friend to so many. Your life was an extraordinary one, 100 years long. It had everything in it, including a 74-year marriage to your longtime love. The two of you established a small but powerful family where love and togetherness was the bond and cement that made it so important. I will be forever grateful to you for helping instill in me a sense of duty, integrity, a strong worth ethic, empathy, charity, and love of family. Your passing marks the end of an era, but please be assured that you will never be forgotten. Your name and beautiful and loving character will be taught to future family members, and they will pass that along to their offspring as well. You leave behind a very loving legacy that you helped to create, and we are all forever grateful to you. You have passed peacefully and now can rejoin Dad to spend an eternity together. We love you so very much, Jim and the rest of the family. These two letters tell us about who she was in a very feeling way. And that's so very important at this time in your lives. And I hope for you and for the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren that they will always remember to, not just to remember her, but to teach others, the next generations, who she was. Because that will give her that sense of immortality that she so richly deserves. And perhaps these words from the poet will help you to place this moment into perspective. But the poet wrote, I am closer than ever before. As the morning sun rises and throughout the busy day, I am with you. Until the setting sun disappears on the horizon and we watch the day turn into night, I am here. You may feel a faint breeze stir around your head while you slumber as I gently kiss your forehead goodnight. The stars that shine so brightly in my heavenly sky help me watch over you and keep you from harm. I am the wind in the trees and the song of a bird. I am moonbeams in a midnight sky and a glorious rainbow after the storm. I am morning dew and freshly fallen snow. I'm a butterfly flying overhead and a puppy happily at play. I'm a smile on a stranger's face, a gentle touch, a warm embrace. Listen to the wind for my message of love. Watch the sun rise and set in the sky with me. Feel my essence encircle you with warm memories. Open your heart to know I am not gone. Reach deep into your soul, you will find me. I am here. Have no fear. I am with you always. I do hope and pray that for each of you, you will continue to find strength in who she was in her life and how she has made this community of ours so much better because of her presence. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach me'atav v'ad olam. God has given. God has taken away. Praise be the name of God now and forevermore. And let us all say together, Amen. Amen.
Now we do the hard work. We've told her story in different ways from different voices, and now with it in our minds and that song in our heart, we say goodbye to the physical part of Gloria that is still with us. And so as she now is in her final resting place, I'm going to invite in just a second her immediate family to come and participate in a ritual that's one of the hardest and also most beautiful parts of a Jewish funeral, where we help to place earth in her grave. And as I told her great-grandchildren last night, as we talked about this moment, I imagine that Gloria probably tucked a lot of people in her day, probably done a lot of bedtimes and tuck-ins and kisses and extra glasses of water, whatever it may be. And she probably spent a lot of time over the last 100 years making sure that some kid in some generation was tucked tight into bed, cozy and safe and warm, and with everything they needed to have a peaceful night's sleep. And we get to give that back to her now, to lay her in this place and to help not just watch, but to physically participate in filling her grave with earth, this place where she will rest, making sure that she is safe, that she is at peace, and that we have helped to make her that way. And so I'm going to invite first Jim and Linda, and then other members of the immediate family who want to participate in taking a shovelful of the earth and placing it into her grave. And we'll take a moment of silence while that happens.
And so with this love in our hearts, and with this final goodbye, I'm going to ask us to rise as we are able for our memorial prayer, the El Malay Rachamim. El Malay Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Pachad Kansa Hashchina, Im Kedushim Odarim, Kezohar Harakia, Masir, Et Nishmat Yakirenu, Shalacha Le'olama, Bol Harachamim, Yastireh Beseder Kenafav Le'olamim, Biturur HaChaim Et Nishmatav, Adonai Unachalatav, V'tanuach B'shalom Hamishkeva V'nomar Amen.
O God, full of compassion, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence unto Gloria Trotsky, who has entered into eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou her possession, and may her repose ever be peace. And let us say together, Amen. Dust and ashes return to the earth as they were. Spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only that which is of the earth that we have replaced into the earth. But the spirit itself cannot die. For here too our dear ones continuing in loving remembrance of those to whom they were precious. Serve in mercy, O God, the soul of our beloved Gloria Trotsky. Grant her that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has compassed it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion, now and forevermore. As now, dear family, we recite together the words that have been hallowed by centuries of faith, the words that have been glorified in our tradition, the words of the Kaddish prayer. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayei chon v'yomei chon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kori v'yimeru, Amen. Yahei shemei Rabbah mivarach, leolam uleolmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, V'yit pa'ar, v'yit ramam, v'yit naseh, v'yit hadar, v'yit halev, v'yit halal, shemei d'kutsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Ose shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yimaru. Amen. Departed whom we now remember has been called unto the peace of life eternal. She shall still live on earth in the acts of goodness she has performed, and in the hearts of those who will ever cherish her memory. We pray that the beauty of her life will ever abide among us all as a living and loving benediction. And may the source of peace send peace unto all you who mourn. And may God comfort all the bereaved among us, among Israel, and all the nations and the families of earth. And let us say together, Amen.
Gloria say, hey, Yeshua, oh, you ready for God has called you. Hey, go your way, and may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you. So we say to you in this moment of Yerushalayim. May God comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. You are not the first nor will you be the last to feel this loss, and yet we surround you with our love and understanding.